He was the King of the Belgians, a master manipulator who owned a country 80 times the size of his own. She was a 16-year-old former prostitute from Paris. Together, they became the most hated couple in Europe. Their love story bankrolled one of the deadliest genocides in human history. While King Leopold II was chopping off the hands of villagers in the Congo to fuel his rubber empire, he was building a private bridge just to sneak into his teenage mistress's bedroom. This is the story of the Builder King, the millions of lives he destroyed, and the young woman they called La Reine du Congo, the Queen of the Congo. To understand the villain, we have to go back to the beginning. Leopold ascended to the throne in 1865, but he didn't want to just be King of Belgium. He thought Belgium was small, boring, and full of small people. He wanted what the British had, an empire. He once sent a paperweight to his finance minister, inscribed with the words, Il faut la Belgique une colonie. Belgium must have a colony. Eventually, he set his sights on the heart of Africa. He hired the famous explorer Henry Morton Stanley to carve out a territory in the Congo Basin. But Leopold was smart. He knew he couldn't just show up and say, I want to steal your land and your people. So he created a charity, a humanitarian front. He told the world he wanted to stop the slave trade, bring civilization, and help the poor African natives. And the world bought it. At the Berlin Conference of 1884-85, Leopold was given personal control of a massive territory, the Congo Free State. It wasn't a Belgian colony, it was his colony, his personal money-making machine. While Leopold was busy building his empire from afar, in Paris, a girl named Blanche Zélie Josephine Delacroix was born into poverty. We know her as Caroline Lacroix. By the time she was 16, she was working as a prostitute to survive. In 1900, the 65-year-old king heard about her attractions. He sent a mysterious woman to approach Caroline with a message. A very high personage had noticed her. Curious, Caroline agreed to a meeting. She was led to a secluded room where Leopold sat waiting with 2 aides. Here's where it gets weird. Caroline had no idea who he was. She was so nervous, she actually mixed up Belgium with Sweden and curtsied, saying, Your Majesty Oscar. Leopold found this hilarious. The 2 aides weren't just for show. They sat on either side of her, making her turn her head left and right, showing off her profile to the mute king. Leopold was impressed. He invited her to run away with him to Austria. The next day, a massive sum of money arrived at her door, along with empty trunks, because he knew she loved to shop. Caroline Lacroix went from the streets of Paris to the palaces of Europe overnight. But to fund Caroline's dresses and palaces, Leopold needed cash, and in the 1890s, he found his gold: rubber. The world was going crazy for rubber for tires and bicycles. The Congo was full of wild rubber vines. Leopold's regime forced the Congolese people to harvest it. Quotas were set. If a village didn't meet the quota, they were punished. To enforce these quotas, Leopold created the Force Publique, a private army. They were often given a terrifying order. For every bullet they used, they had to bring back a right hand as proof it wasn't wasted on hunting. They didn't just kill resistors. They would hold women hostage in fenced enclosures to force the men to work. If the rubber didn't come in, the soldiers would rape, torture, and murder. Entire villages were razed. Some estimates suggest the population of the Congo dropped by 10 million people during this time due to murder, disease, and famine. Missionaries started sending photos back to Europe. Photos of children with missing hands, of people who had been flogged to death with a whip made of hippo hide, called the shikot. The world was starting to realize that the humanitarian king was running a vast, bloody labor camp. So, while millions were dying, what was Leopold doing? He was living out a scandalous romance. By 1902, his wife had died, and his relationship with Caroline became flagrantly open. He installed her in the Villa Vanderborg, right across from his royal palace in Laeken. He was so obsessed and so jealous that he built a private pedestrian bridge over the road so he could visit her whenever he wanted, away from prying eyes. He gave her a noble title, Baroness Fall. He bought her castles in France. He bought her the Villa Leopolda on the French Riviera. She once bragged about spending 3 million francs on dresses at a single store. There's a wild story that proves just how infatuated he was. Caroline complained to Leopold that the evening express train back to Brussels left Paris too early. It didn't give her enough time to shop. So the King of Belgium personally arranged for the national railway timetable to be changed. The train was delayed by an hour, just so his mistress could buy more shoes. The Belgian people were furious. They weren't just angry about the affair. They were angry because they knew where the money was coming from. The Congo. They nicknamed her La Reine du Congo, the Queen of the Congo. By 1909, Leopold was dying. His health was failing. International pressure was mounting to take the Congo away from him. But Leopold was focused on one last thing, legitimizing his love. Just 5 days before his death, on December 12, 1909, Leopold married Caroline in a secret religious ceremony performed by his personal chaplain. However, there was a problem. Under Belgian law, a civil ceremony was required for a marriage to be legal. They didn't have one. The marriage was a disaster for his family. His 3 estranged daughters were banned from his deathbed. But Caroline was right there, holding his hand until the very end. When he died, the Vatican recognized the marriage, but Belgium did not. And then came the will. Leopold had left Caroline a fortune, properties, Congolese bonds, and piles of cash. She was a multimillionaire. The Belgian government and his daughters spent years fighting her in court to get the Congo money back, with mixed success. Caroline went on to marry her former man, divorced him, and lived out her life in France until her death in 1948. She is buried in the famous Père Lachaise cemetery in Paris. But the legacy of Leopold II still stands, literally, all over Brussels. For decades, he was known as the Builder King, responsible for those massive buildings and parks. But we now know those buildings were paid for with blood. In recent years, statues of Leopold have been pulled down and set on fire. Activists point to the 10 million dead and ask, why are we honoring a genocidal maniac? And at the heart of his fortune, sitting in those palaces, was a teenage girl from Paris who just wanted to go shopping. The king got his empire. Caroline got her riches. But the people of the Congo got a scar that history is only now beginning to fully acknowledge. Thanks for watching. If you want to dive deeper into the history of the Congo, check out the book, King Leopold's Ghost. Link is in the description. We'll see you next time.